Hey guys, Michael Mershon back with you again. Happy Friday. If this is your first time joining us, I am Michael Mershon, a Ziglar licensed Choose to Win coach and a Texas broker with eXp Realty here in San Antonio. Wanted to give you a quick overview of what we'll be covering in episode 2, starting off with a recap of episode 1, just in case you missed it. Then covering the mental spoke summed up in one word. Now, there's a lot that goes into the mental spoke, but I'm going to give you the 10,000 foot view. And if you take one thing away from it, I want it to be this word. Thirdly, the 10 components of a strong mental spoke. Now, as you know, there are 7 spokes and each spoke has 10 components. If you didn't know that, go back and watch my last video. We covered all the details in there. And then finally, closing and key takeaways that you can apply to your life this week. Because we do want action, we don't just want knowledge. So without further ado, getting into the recap of last week, episode 1. So what is the Wheel of Life and why do you need it? What does the assessment do and where can you find it? And then the 10 components that make up each spoke. So if you didn't see episode 1 and you're looking for the assessment, I'll just give you the little cheat here. That is in the description of my last video. So if you want to go pull that up, we will get into that a little bit later on here. As you guessed from the title, we're going to be focusing down very narrowly on the mental spoke. So you won't need all the other assessments, but it will be helpful towards the end of the video when we get into what the assessment actually is. But again, overview, if you haven't seen it, this is the Wheel of Life. 7 spokes. Of course, we're focusing on the highlighted one. That's the mental spoke there. This is the actual assessment. Now, as I mentioned, there is 7 spokes, and each spoke has 10 different components. We went into more detail on this, but just so you guys have a little bit of an overview in case you didn't see it. The mental spoke summed up in one word. Now, there's often a lot of confusion when I start working with clients because when I say mental, for most people, that sparks an image of something like mental health. There's been a lot of that in the news recently, especially with the pandemic and everything else going on. Mental health has almost become kind of a buzzword. Now, that is a very, very large, very broad topic that covers many different things. And we're going to go very specific with this. So I'm going to sum it up in one word for you, and that word is input. Now, that may seem a little overly simplistic to some people, but it's not, I promise you. If you change nothing but your input, then you're going to have a dramatic impact on your mental spoke. Specifically, I feel like this Ziglar quote sums it up nicely. What you feed your mind determines your appetite. Or put another way, your input determines your outlook. So what you allow into your mind and what you're feeding your mind is what you're going to crave more, but it's also going to determine and have an impact on how you see the world. So if you eat nothing but, say, sugar and carbs, that's your go-to, and that's pretty much all you eat, then that's what your body's going to crave. Very similarly, if your mind, if all you're feeding it is music and smut TV and movies and video games, and things like that, then that is what your mind's going to crave. It's going to have no desire for knowledge or anything else because it's not receiving any of that. In his book, Tom has an analogy that I think summarizes this very well. If somebody offered you gold bars, say a stack of gold bars, and they also offered to let you pick the purity of those gold bars. So they could be whatever purity you wanted, 50% pure, 75% pure, 90% pure. Did anybody on here choose anything less than 100% pure? Because with gold, purity matters. The more pure the gold, the more valuable it is. So that builds a second question. If somebody offered you a stack of 100% pure gold bars worth millions of dollars, would you be willing to trade your brain for that stack of pure gold bars? No, because your brain is so much more valuable than gold. But how much and how often do we not hold the same standard for our mind that we do for something like gold? If our mind is so much more valuable than gold, then why do we not want anything but 100% pure going into it? And that brings us into the 10 components of a strong mental spoke. Again, like I mentioned, there's 7 spokes and each spoke has 10 components. We're going to be talking specifically about the mental spoke and the 10 components that make it up. Those 10 components are listed here. And again, I want you to look at this through the lens of input because input will affect everything. Input's going to affect your attitude. Input's going to affect your intelligence. Input's going to affect your formal education, so on. Each one of these is going to be dramatically impacted by the input that you allow into your mind. And the point here is not to get 100%. We're not looking to get a perfect score on this. The point of this is not to get a perfect 100 or perfect tens in each category. The point of this is to have an honest conversation with yourself. Because too many times we go through life without really knowing where we're at, where we're starting from. And that's extremely important if you want to change because you have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of energy. And you want to maximize your time and maximize your energy where it's going to do the most good. And the way that we can do that is by pinpointing the area that we are struggling the most in and then focusing our time and our energy in that area. Now, you may be looking at some of these and you're thinking, well, some of these are out of my control, surely. So I went ahead and I summarized it and I put everything that's in your control on that list, all 10 of them. Everything out of those 10 that's on your list is on this left side. Everything that's out of your control is on the right side here. Now, you may be looking at a little skeptical and saying, okay, well, intelligence, I have no control over my intelligence. Or my inquisitive mind, I've just never liked to learn. Or my self image, I was always talked down to as a kid, so I have a horrible self image. Whatever it may be, everything on this list is in your control. And furthermore, none of them are set in stone. Every single thing on this list can be changed and can be improved. And that is proved and backed by neuroscience. You may think something like intelligence, creative imagination, and the inquisitive mind are set in stone, and those are things you're either born with or not. But the fact is that neuroscience has disproved that, and it has proved that the brain is actually made of gray matter, and it is capable of reshaping and reforming itself. And furthermore, it can create new neural pathways that allow you to improve your intelligence, improve your creative imagination, connecting your left brain to your right brain, improving your inquisitive mind to where you actually desire and want to learn more about things. So, why it may be influential, it is certainly not authoritative, and nothing on this list is set in stone. Everything can be changed if you have the right tools to do it. So, final thoughts, guys. Again, it's not about being perfect in all of these areas or really in any of these areas. That's not the goal here. The goal is summed up by this next quote: the fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good ones. And that's Tom Ziglar in his book, Choose to Win. So, if you have already taken the assessment, then you have a pretty good idea what areas you're lacking in on this list. If you have not taken the assessment, then I want you to go ahead and just, in a second, pause this video, and what you're going to do is write down each of these in a sheet of paper. And then you're going to give yourself a rank from 1 to 10. So 1 being horrible, you're completely awful at it. 10 being you're a rock star and you're crushing it, you can't do any better. And then I want you to go through and rank yourself from 1 to 10, somewhere in there. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is for each one. And then once you've done that for all 10, come back and turn the video on and we'll get into the next step. So hopefully I had a chance to do that. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. But the bigger point here is that now you know where to focus your energy. So say self-image is something you really struggle with. Now you know that making a small change in your self-image over the next week can help you improve that. Something like affirmation cards. If you're familiar with Ziglar, then you have probably seen the self-talk cards. That takes 2 or 3 minutes. You can do that 2 or 3 minutes in the morning, 2 or 3 minutes at night, and I guarantee you at the end of the week, you will have a drastically different self-image. You will even notice a difference the day of because you will have changed your input. So it cannot help but improve your outlook and the way you view yourself. And that's true of every single one of these areas. So my challenge to you is commit to one area. I want you to commit to one area on this list that you're going to work on consistently for the next week. It doesn't have to be big changes. Remember, the fastest way to success is to replace bad habits with good ones. So we want small changes. We want something that you know you can be consistent. That takes a few minutes. Maybe it's something in the car. Maybe you automobile university. Instead of listening to music on the way to the work, you're going to commit that 10, 15, 20-minute drive to listening to an audiobook. Whatever it is for you, commit to a small change that you can be consistent with over the next week. And I guarantee you that doing that will get you results. So that's all I got for today, guys. I know that if you're watching this video, then you want change. And I know change can be scary and change can be overwhelming sometimes. But pick one thing, whatever it is for you, and just focus on it for the next week. Make small changes, be consistent with it, And I guarantee you by the end of this series, we're going to have some great results. Anyway, guys, that's all I got for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and come back next Friday for more.